So number 10 for me is Aston Villa.
Ooh.
Aston Villa does have the historical context in the Champions League. They're not doing so well in the Prem right now, and it'll probably be a long shot for them to return to the Champions League unless they have a significant run to close out the season. They still have the FA Cup available to them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they're at my number 10. I think
and a lot of big teams are out of the FA Cup too.
Correct, and they could be one of the teams to take it. I could see Unai Emery taking this team to an FA Cup victory. So if they lose in the Champions League, I don't think, a lot of people are going to be up in arms that they didn't end up winning the Champions League.
Nico, I'm going to have to start making some notes. I can see it.
Okay.
No, but so far so good.
Right. I mean, so far so good. We don't have any context.
Let's end it right here.
So then at number 9, I've got Dortmund. Right? Dortmund does have a history in the Champions League. It's a club with expectations, but their season is going terribly.
Yeah.
They're not good. Their players aren't good enough.
Except one.
Except one who's been up to par, and it feels like it's too much of Guirassy and relying on Julian Brandt, and Adeyemi hasn't been to his best. Gittins started really well, but hasn't been consistent all season. So they're at my number 9. Hopefully you guys follow. At number 8, and this might be a little bit shocking, Liverpool.
What?
Their pressure to win Champions League. I think there are other teams under more pressure because from the outset, if I would have told you under Arne Slot from the beginning, do you think this team was going to win the Prem? You would have all said?
No.
Yes.
9.
Oh,
9.
get out of here.
9.
I would have.
That they would have won the Prem?
I wish I could show you group chats. I honestly wish I could show you group chats.
Okay. Pull the receipts for tomorrow.
We're going to pull the
Fair.
receipts.
All right, but the sample size that I've got here is one person saying yes and 3 other people saying no.
Okay.
So 25% chance from people thinking that they would win the Prem. They are exceeding expectations on all accounts, Liverpool. And if they end up losing in the Champions League, which they very well could to PSG, and they still win the Prem, it's an extraordinary season.
And possibly the Carabao Cup.
And possibly the Carabao Cup. It's an extraordinary season, the first season under Arne Slot.
I would agree with that.
Of course, you're Liverpool. Yeah. You're the 3rd most winning team in Champions League history. You want to win the Champions League, but under pressure to win the Champions League, there's less pressure on Arne Slot, given the fact that they're doing so well on several other competitions.
My notes are getting larger, that's what I'm saying. Okay.
Atletico Madrid. Oh, no, 7, excuse me. I jumped the spot. 7 is Arsenal, right? Not doing so well. This is their only trophy available to them, but look at the size. Look at the expectation of the club. Trophies available to them. This is a tournament that they should win. I just think that there's other teams.
This is also it for them.
Yeah, but I think there's other teams that have more pressure to win the Champions League.
Okay, yeah.
Then Arsenal.
JD,
Yes.
JD is an Arsenal fan.
I'm just going to say
shocked to hear that.
contextually, I think the pressure around Arsenal to win the Champions League is something that is deeper than just this season. When you look at the teams historically within the competition, a lot of them can claim, even Aston Villa can claim, they've lifted Europe's largest competition. Yeah. Arsenal have never done that. I'm not going to go back and cause trauma to the Arsenal fans of what happened in Paris, but being close or close enough is not good enough. And so to have them as 7, I'm interested to know who you have above them because the pressure for
definitely.
Arsenal to win and the investment that's been put into this squad.
I completely agree. And if they win, the Champions League is a saving grace from the season. But my first criteria was size and expectations of the club.
So you don't think Arsenal's a big team?
What have they won to prove that they're a big team?
13 Premier League titles?
Recently.
About 9,
What have they,
about 9 years ago?
No, right now. Like Aston Villa, I consider them, but their European success was so many years ago. None of us were alive.
You know what's so interesting, though? You know what's so interesting? Why I hear people say this? I hear people talk about Real Madrid's history all the time. That's all they do. They put Real Madrid at the forefront. Real Madrid is probably the premier club within Europe, right? Liverpool's another club that had gone a long period of time without winning a domestic trophy. Yet everyone still puts them at the forefront. When you bring up Arsenal's domestic trophies, it's like, what have they won recently? It's exactly the same context.
But for the Champions League, I think Arsenal do need it, but there are other teams with a better track record very recently, with a better form, that are under pressure. Do we believe that Arsenal could win the Champions League? They could win the Champions League. Are they good enough? I don't know if they're good enough right now, but they're a team that's built to win the Champions League. Last season they were really good. They're not as good as last season. I probably would have fancied them last season to win the Champions League over this season.
Yeah.
Then Atletico Madrid and Inter are my 6 and 5. Atletico Madrid with the investment in the squad, how many times they've gotten to finals. They've gotten to more finals recently than Arsenal have in the Champions League. And the fact that there's other two big teams in Spain. Cholo Simeone is the highest paid manager in the world, highly experienced, and a team that's finally highly invested in on all accounts. They're deep. They can compete not only in Copa del Rey, in La Liga. They have to walk away with a trophy. And Inter, they're better than the team that's gotten to the Champions League final. Then at my number 4, it's Barca. This is when we're talking about size of the club. Multiple-time European champion. And have fallen off the mark several times. And when you see a Real Madrid in the vicinity winning as much as they win, you have pressure on Barcelona. Then PSG. PSG number 3.
Number 3?
Number 3?
PSG's all they play for is the Champions League. What happens if what happens if PSG doesn't win the Champions League?
Heads will roll.
Exactly.
Managers come and go.
That's why.
How is that not number 1?
How's that number? You took the words out of my mouth, Michael.
I'm interested to see you have.
I'm interested to know who your number 2 and number 1 is because I've seen teams.
Let's see the rest of the list, and then you guys can say what you would have changed.
So my number 2 is Bayern, given the size of the club, given the lack of experience from the manager, given the fact that they're coming off of a Bundesliga loss. Because if they lose to Bayer Leverkusen, but they win the Bundesliga, that's going to add a stain to their season. And then number 1, it's Real Madrid. We're talking about possibly Carlo Ancelotti getting fired if he does not win the Champions League. He can win La Liga, and he'll probably still get fired if he doesn't win the Champions League. Talk about pressure. That's, for me, it's Real Madrid several steps ahead of the rest just because of the nature of the club.
Yeah.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yes.
Okay, what's the biggest change that you each would have?
I think if I'm looking at this list, I can understand the Bayern angle because the pressure, especially with the final being in their host city and the responsibility they have, they want to be in that performance. They want to turn around and have that showcase and having a new manager. I think historically everyone's seen the context of Arsenal. I think they should be definitely higher on the list.
So that was my issue. I wanted to move Arsenal higher, but where would you have put him?
I would have put Arsenal. I would have put Arsenal as having more pressure winning the Champions League than Barcelona.
Am I living in a dream?
I would have had
this
more
Arsenal side to win the Champions League. When the competition started, I didn't even have them in my top 5 to win the Champions League. I don't think Arsenal are good enough.
I think that's
to even
too high,
to be in this conference. I would actually put Arsenal maybe 9th.
But the word you said was pressure. You didn't say good. You said pressure.
Pressure on the club. There was more pressure on the club to win the Premier League than the Champions League this season.
I would agree with that.
Europe was a bonus. Premier League was Premier League or bust. They came within how many points of City the last 2 seasons?
Yep.
They didn't close the gap enough, so that was the number 1 club that I thought maybe even put them 10th.